Modern third-wave feminism is nothing more than Marxism in a skirt. Among its ultimate goals was the destruction of the nuclear family by ousting the father from the household and marrying the mother to the state. It seeks to enforce socialist principles, such as economic control being handed over to the state in order to heavily regulate every aspect of the free market. It has sought to create a branch of radical gender politics to build the false narrative that women in the Western world are oppressed by men, and that they should be given special treatment by the government as a result. Feminism lobbies for an increase in rights and freedoms for women while divorcing them of the associated responsibilities. Famous man-hating hardline feminist Catherine McKinnon is quoted as saying, "Feminism, socialism, and communism are one and the same, and socialist communist government is the goal of feminism." As Karen Strawhan has pointed out, in much the same way communism maintained that workers' rights are being exploited by the bourgeoisie, the concept of patriarchy under third-wave feminism maintains that women are being oppressed by all things masculine in society. This is simply a reskinned version of Marxist ideology. Feminism takes advantage of humanity's innate desire to care more for the plight of women than men. However, feminism has successfully abused this impulse to such an extent so as to provide Western women with significant privileges over men. For example, the gender pay gap myth, which states that women are being purposefully paid less than men on average due to gender discrimination. In actuality, it's because men work more hours than women overall and tend to lean more towards skilled and/or dangerous occupations. Women will almost always receive significantly shorter prison sentences than men for committing the same crime. The belief in female oppression has also given rise to affirmative action in the workplace and education, preference in child custody rights, and rape and domestic violence accusations being believed by default with no evidence. The feminists of today are cultural Marxists and social constructionists. They crave political and socio-economic power and position, which is why they are concerned with seeing more female representation in the more comfortable, less dangerous, and cerebral areas of the labour market. They have little to no interest in seeing more women enter such fields as construction, logging, mining, factory work, sanitation, or other manual labour positions. Those men and the fundamentally crucial roles they fulfill in society are completely discarded because to acknowledge their importance would be to acknowledge that men are indeed pivotal to ensuring the very existence and prosperity of our civilization. Feminists even make light of the sacrifices made by men in the military, where they again manage to employ their reality-distorting logic and emotionally driven leftist rhetoric to convince us to once again ignore the plight of men in war. Feminist Hillary Clinton is quoted as saying, "Women have always been the primary victims of war. Women lose their husbands, their fathers, their sons in combat. Women often have to flee from the only homes they have ever known. Women are often the refugees from conflict and sometimes, more frequently in today's warfare, victims. Women are often left with the responsibility alone of raising the children." A truly extraordinary piece of mental gymnastics, you'll no doubt agree. She maintains that women who are safe at home, in fact, are more affected by war on the other side of the planet than the men fighting and dying in that war. With the gradual erosion of the institution of marriage by feminist ideology, it is no surprise that 80% of suicides are committed by men. Society has simply turned its back on them and demonized them at every opportunity. Male-centric spheres such as men's rights events and conferences which focus on discussing men's issues concerning mental well-being, custody rights, and unfair divorce settlements are regularly protested and shut down by feminists who claim they are misogynistic or harmful to women. These psychotic feminists have been indoctrinated to show no empathy or compassion toward the challenges facing their fellow human beings. After all, they're just men, right? Men's domestic abuse shelters and support networks are also targeted by radical feminists, leaving men without a voice to express their pain and suffering. Is it any wonder Men are opting out of society and going their own way. What's left for men in a world that not only fails to value them, but actively seeks to destroy them? The next generation also suffers from the loss of a strong male presence in the home. 63% of suicides are from fatherless homes. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts are from fatherless homes. 85% of youths in prisons, yes, you've guessed it, they come from fatherless homes. While all this is happening, any and all counter-narratives concerning feminism are deemed to be a form of hate speech, bigotry, or misogyny. Feminism has maintained the absurd view that men and women are completely interchangeable and that gender is a social construct. They cite the reason as to why men and women end up in different career paths as nothing to do with individual choices and everything to do with patriarchal, systematic oppression of women by men. You see, if it were not for men, we'd see plenty of more women in IT, the military, working as steeplejacks, driving trucks, being plumbers, carpenters, and engineers, engaging in physical and often dangerous sports and activities, and becoming CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, sure we would. This is despite the fact that science has proven that women are naturally more risk-averse and wired for more empathic occupations, while men are more likely to engage in risky behavior and choose more technical fields. We're told that every single space in society, from politics, education to entertainment, can and should be improved by having dramatically less male involvement and disproportionately higher female participation. Masculinity, it seems, must be smeared as toxic, and everything from manspreading, standing up while peeing, or holding a door open for women is problematic and sexist. Men in today's world are under no illusion that everything they do is wrong, and they are continuously reminded of this. Disagreement with feminists on Twitter nowadays can even land you in court. As Canadian Gregory Allen Elliott discovered over the last 3 years, he was facing 6 months in prison for this truly heinous crime. He was thankfully found not guilty of all charges of online harassment and cyber violence, and freedom of speech won the day in the end, thankfully, but it should never have gotten as far as the court system. Feminists are actively seeking to turn the internet into one gigantic safe space for women where they can be shielded from differing opinions and legitimate criticism. Men are simply tired of being labeled as monsters and being told that they are the cause of all of society's ills. The belief in an imagined rape culture in the West is just another reason why men are now shunning romantic relationships with women and retreating into a world of pornography, video games, and hobbies. Traditional gender roles have been destroyed and bastardized to the point where men are no longer needed. This is the belief that women need a man like a fish needs a bicycle, yet many depictions of men in pop culture show them as overgrown man babies who desperately need the validation of a perfect Mary Sue female partner. So while monogamy is now seen as an antiquated concept and women are told that they can have it all in society, the truth is that women are much less happy in today's world. There are now more women in the workforce than men, and they are 33% more likely to earn college degrees. Women seeking to become domestic housewives and stay-at-home mothers are shamed for this natural impulse. While I'm not suggesting that all women should stay at home, I am saying that women who do so should be celebrated as they once were. After all, the important roles of mothers and fathers are instrumental to the success of human society and not working in white-collar office jobs for the man. But a Marxist political movement must shame women for doing this, because that way, when both parents must work, the state can get their hands on the children in daycare and the education system as early as possible. Children can be indoctrinated sooner, and the influence of parents can be greatly reduced, thus making people more dependent on the state for all their needs from birth to death. Someone else is effectively raising your children while you're at work. Also, what's bad for the traditional family home is great for the economy in general. Putting your children in daycare and having both parents in the workforce benefits the economy from a taxation point of view and from an employment perspective. Additionally, when the family breaks down under the strain of such a messed up system, divorce is economically beneficial to the state because the lawyers can have a financial field day. Men and women going their separate ways are then likely to buy new homes, new cars, furniture, etc. It's win-win for the economy in a myriad of ways. Not so great for the family and children involved, however. Despite the lies that feminism has sold women about how they can and should shun their maternal instincts and pursue a career instead, it's no surprise that women report being less happy than ever. Motherhood is probably the most important role of a human being. It's also an intrinsic and timeless one, unlike the fickle and transient nature of the corporate workplace. Female suicide and depression rates are higher than ever because studies show that women in positions of authority are simply more stressed and less happy. This is because our society has bought into a culture that promotes promiscuity, downplays marital infidelity as the norm, encourages materialism and solipsism, and actively normalizes abortion. Is it any wonder people are unhappy today? Women are now much less likely to have children in their prime fertile years of their 20s and 30s and are either choosing to have them much later with the aid of medical assistance in their late 30s or early 40s, or not at all. This is what the supposed liberation feminists talk about has given women: loneliness, lack of purpose and meaning, and depression. High levels of promiscuity in people's 20s has also been linked to unhappiness, dissatisfaction, and ultimately divorce. Feminists told women that by getting out into the workforce that they would be empowered and free, but the truth is quite the opposite. Women in the home are in fact the masters of their own destiny because they aren't being controlled as white-collar drones by corporate capitalists. Young men nowadays seek to retreat from all this insanity and satiate their needs with player and PUA culture, porn, and video games, despite the fact that feminism continues to try to invade these spaces. The porn industry is pressured by feminists incessantly and lobby groups to become more and more regulated, which is ultimately just a plot to control and shame male sexuality. The video game industry, as we've witnessed with Gamergate, was targeted somewhat unsuccessfully by feminists for perceived sexism. It appears men just simply can't be left alone and must be continuously harassed at every turn. This is, of course, all part of the plan. In school, young boys are targeted and disciplined for their natural inclination towards rough and tumble play, and girls are held as the gold standard in modern classroom behavior. Young boys are even given medication to make them more docile, a truly Orwellian perversion. Is it any wonder they are drastically falling behind their female counterparts in academic achievement? Of course, if you want to destroy a society, the best thing to do is target men and boys. If a burglar, for example, is breaking into your house, who should he incapacitate first? The wife, children, or the husband? Well, the husband, of course. He is more likely to be the greatest physical threat, and so a Marxist ideology like feminism must incapacitate men in society, emasculate and feminize them, and ultimately suppress their natural impulses in order to change society. So when boys are reprimanded in school for picking up a stick and pretending it's a gun while making shooting noises during playtime, feminists make a truly heinous mistake. Boys and men are programmed by nature to protect others and daydream about being the hero that rescues the damsel in distress. It's the reason that type of story has existed in culture since time immemorial, and despite what feminists say, reading any woman's romance novel will prove to you that women fantasize about being rescued by a man as much as men fantasize about rescuing them. Masculinity, when channeled in a positive fashion, protects the women and the physically less capable in society. It makes men into positive role models, policemen, firefighters, soldiers, commanders and world leaders, and strong fathers. When masculinity is channeled in a negative fashion, it gives rise to genuine misogyny and oppression of women, such as the values found in the Islamic world. What feminists fail to do is recognize the difference between these two states of masculinity. If you destroy healthy, assertive, and positive representations of masculinity in our society, you will leave a vacuum. You will make it so that all we have left are beta-regressive liberal mangina white knights and effeminate hipsters. There will be no one to stand in the way of the genuine threats of outside forces that wish to enter into Western society and rape and subjugate women. Violence is sometimes necessary in society in order to protect it. If good men and their masculinity are disempowered, there will be no physically strong presence to stand in opposition to bad men when they arise. Where men would once receive admiration and praise for their natural roles as protectors of women, children, and the elderly, they are now condemned for these impulses. So if there's no incentive for men to be heroes, or even aspire to be so, is it any wonder men are going MGTOW from not just women, but from all of society? MGTOW, or men going their own way, is not the solution, but it is a symptom of a deeply troubled society and a totally understandable and rational response to a culture that no longer values men. Women's issues and challenges are important, but so too are men's issues, and it's clear that society cares more for the former than the latter. If we want true equality, and I would dare say that if we want Western culture to survive at all, men's voices must not be silenced, they must be heard. Marxist feminism is a societal cancer that must be excised.